and we'll go ahead and jump in. Um, Thanks again for joining round 2 of these webinars. We'll have another one on Friday. Today we're going to talk about race management, which is the entries, calculating your lineups, publishing your results. We'll also talk a little bit about connecting to Orbitz or Race Manager, so live timing can appear. We'll talk a little bit about the lineup monitor screen, and then points and payouts as well. So figure this to take up about 30 minutes of your time today, maybe a little more. But I definitely appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, if you have questions, if you're watching on Google Meet, there's a chat option here. Type questions there. If you're watching on Facebook Live, put your questions in the comments, and we will circle back with you. You can also email us at any point. support@myracepass.com is our email address. We'll be happy to field anything that you've got there. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So we're talking about race management today. Which, whether when you're on the dashboard page, whether you click the button on the bottom of the screen or the checkered flag, brings you to race management. Race management is basically race night stuff, right? We talked about season management on Monday, where we're getting ready for the season, creating a schedule, getting a registration out there, talk a little bit about fantasy as well. Race night management, though, is largely what we're doing on race night. There's things that you can do in advance to prepare, which I will call out. But that's kind of what we're focused on today. When you first come to race management, you can see that there's a filter in the upper left-hand portion of the screen where you can filter to previous race nights, future race nights, so you can start to manage things, that way. But this will always default to the next event chronologically in front of you. So the setup tab is the first tab you see. Setup will basically direct the program on how you want to handle a pill draw, how you want to handle transponders, and then there's a registration option here as well that we'll talk about. This is all pretty simple stuff. If you're a track that does a pill draw, you can have that. The at check-in auto draw is basically the default. It finds a pill draw number at the same process that you're finding a driver. It's the fastest check-in process. But there are options for it to auto draw before you find a driver or after. There's also manual entry options as well. If you're having them draw, from a poker chip or a lotto wheel or whatever, you can do it that way. I know that a lot of asphalt tracks don't do a pill draw. There's a no pill draw option as well. So, keep in mind that this isn't obviously required, but it is an option that's available. Second thing in here is transponder options. Transponders, this is pretty straightforward, right? Do you use transponders? If so, do you have a stock of transponders people can rent from you? Straightforward there. There is a required registration option as well. If your track is requiring a membership to be able to either compete or be eligible to earn points, you can use this required registration option, and it'll basically work as a license check, whether it's a single event or a yearly registration. The program, if they have not registered, will notify you that they have not registered when you're signing drivers in. So you can either allow them to compete without a registration or whatever else. And then when you're applying points, you can only apply points to registered drivers as well. So if you have that membership to calculate points, that can be an option for you. And all of these things you can save as defaults, right? So if I get the pill draw option that I want, the transponder option that I want, save as defaults, you theoretically should only really have to look at this screen preparing for your first event, because if the defaults are saved properly, it'll automatically do what you need it to do every week. Entries then is the next screen here. And I'll come back to MRP Live after we've got some lineups created. But entries is the process of entering a driver into your event. Right? So there's two ways to find a driver. There's this competitors list on the left-hand side of the screen. This is basically a list of all of the drivers who have raced with you before in this class or have registered with you in this class. You'll notice at the top of the screen next to the event date drop-down, there's now a class drop-down as well, so you can toggle between classes here. But this My Competitors list is, just a list of drivers who have raced with you or registered with you. You can filter this by car number, right? So I can start typing car numbers in here to filter that. You can also change it from your competitors to a couple of other options, pre-entries being the other most common one. If you have an event-specific registration for this date, this will show you a list of everybody who registered for that event. But the competitors list is by far the most commonly used. Next way to find a driver is the scan barcode option right here. If you have a barcode scanner at the back gate, we have hard cards that you can assign to drivers. They also have that barcode in their app if they've claimed their profile. To make it very fast and easy to find that driver, you just scan the barcode and boom, the driver's in the entry list. You can also search by name. It's a string of text. So search the name, and there you go. So those are the 3 ways to find a driver. Every driver who's ever raced at any track that uses My Race Pass will already have a driver profile. So creating new shouldn't really come up all that often, but it is possible that you'll find a driver who's never ran at My Race Pass track, or they're a rookie driver or whatever else. So there is a create new option at the bottom of the search. If you can't find them, create new, first, last, hometown, and that will create them a profile. And if you run across any driver who has multiple profiles, you see their name listed more than once, 2 profiles for the same driver, send that to us so we can merge them together. But regardless of how you find a driver, this is the screen that comes up, right? So I'll add myself to the entry list. This is what you see. There's a lot of information here. There's really only 4 things that we need to put somebody to an entry list. First, the pill draw number. I have it set to the @check-in auto draw, so it automatically drew me a 27. That field is grayed out. I can't edit that field. That's the pill draw number. If you're a track that does not use the pill draw, obviously that won't be there, so you'll have one less thing to worry about. Second thing in here is car number. Car number is what it sounds like, right? Number on the side of the car. The program will not allow duplicate car numbers on a per class basis. So if I go in here as 23, somebody else shows up and says they're number 23, you'd have to put an X or an initial or something like that behind their number. The program also will allow special characters here. So, a $, an asterisk for a star, those types of things can be used here. Next thing is car owner information, and there's 2 instances in which car owner will come up. One, it's rare anymore to see this, but there are still tracks out there or series out there that use owner points. So if you're calculating owner points, every driver has to have a car owner listed here. You can find, if you hit the search next to the owner field, it'll bring up a list of all of the owners that driver has ever had in the program, so you can easily pick which one they're going to be using. If there's nothing listed here, if it's somebody else, you can go to the all owners field, type the search here. So if I ever raced for Casey Kane, I could type Casey Kane Racing. Here we go. There's also add from scratch over here as well. But yeah, it'll be important though to mark that as default once you've picked the owner, so it shows up every week for them if you're doing owner points. Now, if you're not doing owner points, the only time car owner will appear for you or will matter for you is if someone other than the driver is getting paid. Then you would add the owner, check the payout goes to owner box. When you print checks at the end of the night through My Race Pass, or when you track your payments through our 1099 report, the correct owner will be listed as the payee as opposed to the driver. Alternate payee exists here as well. This is a very seldom used feature, but it is available for a really specific circumstance. If you're doing owner points, so you've got an owner in the box, but then someone else is the payee, not the driver, not the owner for points, but there's actually a third party that's the payee. You can put that alternate payee in here, set that as the default payee. So now the driver will get driver points, the owner will get owner points, and the alternate payee will actually get the check. Again, seldom used feature, but it is here and available. So there's 3, right? Pill draw, car number, owner information. The 4th and final thing that we need to put somebody to an entry list is the transponder number. If you have a transponder system, if you're using transponders, type the transponder number in here. If you click in the box, it'll show you a list of all of the transponders that person has used recently. So if it's their own, it'll be the same every time. And it's a good indication that you can set that as default because it's their own. If they're renting from you, mark the transponder rented box. At the end of the night, you can run the entry list report. That'll show you everyone who rented a transponder from you, so you can kind of track those down, or at least track the drivers down. Still recommend to take some kind of collateral for a rented transponder, like a driver's license or something. But at least this way, you'll have the report. So that's everything that we need to put somebody to an entry list. And you can see 3 of the 4 fields were pre-filled for me because I'm using the defaults. So really, night 1, make sure all this information is right and correct. And then every night after that, you're largely just going to be verifying it, right? Hey, here's your pill draw number. Are you still number 23? Does the payout still go to Austin Lloyd Racing? Is your transponder number still this? If yes, then add. It goes extremely, extremely quickly, everything after night number 1. Couple of other things in here that I want to point out. The competitor information on the left largely comes from registrations. So, age just from their birthday when they register. If their profile's claimed, do you have their address? The has all forms check boxes through registration as well. Confirmed memberships will tell you the registrations that they filled out at your racetrack. So this is where you can verify if they've registered or not. And then over on the the right-hand toggle, there's a lineup override. If you have a driver who, for whatever reason, needs to start in the back for heats or for all races, you can use lineup override to basically ignore the lineup calculation and push them to the back. There's no reason to make anybody inactive unless you're doing entries well in advance and you don't want them to show until race day. Leave everybody active. Payment amount, payment method, and contingency information. If you have questions about those, email us directly. They're very rarely used features and they get pretty complicated. So I'll go ahead and add. Now I've got a driver in the entry list, right? So I'm just basically going to add 10 drivers to my fake race here. And you can see when you've got the defaults filled in, it can go very quickly to add a driver into the entry list. All of your entries and lineups can be exported into your timing system, which I'll show you as well when that comes up. But let me get 10 drivers in here. And we'll have a fake race. One other thing that I will point your attention to in this screen also is there's an import from previous race option. So if I go ahead and import from previous race, I can choose a previous entry list, which comes in handy for multi-day events where you're going to have basically all the same drivers there. When you import, you can copy the transponder number from the previous event. You can copy the pill number if necessary, copy the driver list, all of those types of things. So that's a nice setting as well. And then I guess the last thing on this screen is you can reorder the list by name, pill number, or car number if you want to reorder this list however you want to order it. Go ahead and save that. Next option is the Races tab. And Races is one thing that I'll typically do before I get to the racetrack on the day of the event, because typically I'll know or have a good idea of how many cars I'm going to have. Makes it a little bit easier there for me. So when I go to the Races tab, you do one of two things. One, you can copy from a previous event. So I'm just going to copy this one. But you can also add them from scratch. So when I go to add races, you can add a qualifying races, practice or hot laps, however you want to word that, a dash, heat races, a feature, basically whatever you want to do. The only thing here that I'll tell you is when you're adding a feature, you have to add the letter moniker, right? Is this an A main, a B main, those types of things. You can add the number of types. So if you're adding heat races, you could add 3 if you wanted. The number of laps, and then how many drivers go to tech. The laps option, I'll tell you for qualifying, if you're doing qualifying, I would leave this blank. A lot of people's first reaction for laps is to put a 2 in here because everybody gets 2 laps in qualifying, right? But what that'll do in your timing system is it'll automatically checkered flag the race after the first car, which is not what you want. So leave that blank for a qualifying session. Otherwise, you can add whatever you want here. I'm just going to copy from a previous event. I had an A feature, 2 heats, and a qualifying session. I'll copy that. Perfect. So there's a couple of other things that I want to point your attention to in this screen. Once you've got your races added, you can rename them, right? So instead of qualifying, if you call it time trials, instead of heat races, if you call it, motos, if it's motocross, whatever you want to call it, you can rename. You can also add sponsors to your race types, right? So you've got your Lincoln Electric time trials. You've got your Bob's Garage Heat 1, your H&H Mobile Home A-Main, whatever you want to do for that. And then the last thing that I really draw your attention to in this screen is the transfers. I would say on a first night track that's using my race pass for the first time, the number one question that we get is when you go to calculate your A feature, it'll say, you don't have any cars in this race. And then people freak out and they call us. Well, that comes from the transfers option. So you want to tell the program how many cars are going to the next race, right? From qualifying, I'm not going to send any to the A feature. I'm going to send them all to the heat races. From the heat races, I'm going to send them all to the A main. But you could do the top 5 per race to the A, everybody else to a B, those types of things. So you can set your transfers there. But either way, you've got the races tab the way you want it. The next option is lineups. Lineups then is where we're setting a lineup for a race. When you're in dirt track racing, the world that I come from, most commonly the qualifying order is set by the pill draw. I know in asphalt racing, the qualifying order typically is randomized or set some other way. So the lineup doesn't matter. But in my race pass, we need a lineup in order for the results to work correctly. So I can calculate lineups a couple of different ways. One, I can do it manually, right? Click on the name of the driver and the order that you want them to go out, and you've got your lineup that way. You can also calculate lineups via the automatic lineups tool, where basically we're just selecting what lineup option we want to use. And for qualifying, there's not very many. For heat races and features, there's almost 100 at this point. But you can do it a couple of different ways, right? Use the pill draw. Use their hot lap time if you want to do it that way. Just by last name, completely randomized. By points, whatever you want to do, right? There's a lot of options out there for you. I'll do it by last name. Calculate. Now they're in a qualifying order, and you're ready to send this information now into your timing system. So again, as I'd mentioned, Orbitz or Westhold, you don't have to duplicate this entry process in your timing software. You can import it. How do we import it? Well, we use the tool called MRP Live, right? So I've got Orbitz up on this machine, ready to go. You can see in registration, I don't have anything in here. No classes, no races, nothing. So I can use MRP Live to send them to Orbitz. You can download the application here. I would really recommend that you download and install MRP Live on the same machine that Orbitz is running on. I'm going to use Orbitz for qualifying. When we do our A feature, I'll come back and show you how to connect to Westhold if you're using Race Manager. But really all we need is 3 pieces of information, and 2 of them will basically never change. So when I go to Orbitz, there is a distribution tab, which will show you an IP address and a port number in the scoreboard feed. Put the IP address here, put the port number here. Port number is basically always 50,000. Make sure you've got the right timing system selected. Third piece of information, and this is really the only thing that'll change on a week-to-week basis, is this connection code. You can either click Launch from Web to pull up MRP Live with the connection code built in, or I can just copy and paste. Doesn't matter. But that's all we really need, right? IP import out of Orbitz, connection code out of my race pass, and connect. Now that I'm connected, I've got entries, I've got lineups. I can press the Get Lineups button to push everything to Westhold. So now when I come to Westhold, instead of messing with the big database and all of that stuff, I can just import the groups first. That's the class data. So I've got my classes ready to go right here. I'm only using one class for this event. It does bring over all of them at once. So you've got your cart number, your name, your class, your transponder, all of those types of things. And then I can import the runs as well. The runs is the race data. So it's your lineup basically and your race types that you're running. So I've got a qualifying session here. All of those drivers are in the qualifying session. You can see the start position came over. We're ready to go. That's all you'll have to do to get the data into Orbitz. It's actually even simpler in Westhold, and I'll show you that when we do the feature event later on. So I can jump over to timing. Actually, Orbitz has a track simulator, so let me open that so we can run our fake race here. And there we go. So while that's running, there are 2 other tools in my race pass that I'm going to show you here. First is a tool called the lineup monitor. This is a screen that will auto update all night that will show the lineups that you've got created, but they'll fall off of this screen as soon as the race is completed. Right? So when you go and save the results, it'll fall off of this screen. So you can put this if you've got a whiteboard or a chalkboard or somewhere where you staple paper lineups, anywhere that you've got a centrally located area to display lineups for your drivers. Not only will the lineup show in the My Race Pass app, but you can also use this screen to basically replace what you've been doing previously. It'll auto update all night long. Every 30 seconds it updates, shows you the lineups that exist, gets rid of the lineups that have been completed. The next tool that I'll show you is, let me refresh this here. The next tool that I'll show you is this lap viewer option. You can see it in the MRP Live tab, but I like the lap viewer. It's all of the timing information in the browser. I'm an announcer outside of this. I look at this screen as much as I look at the racetrack, especially for a qualifying session. So you can see the running order. You can see the best lap view. If the race name has hot laps or practice or time trials or qualifying, it'll automatically show the best lap first. You can see positions gained. You can see the average lap time, including the average over the last 3 laps. You can put your lap leaders up here as well. As an announcer, this is extremely valuable information. If your announcer is on broadcast, if you're pay-per-viewing your race, make them sound smarter and better at their jobs. Get more information in front of the fans. Use this information. There we go. That's that. Let me stop the track simulator, and I can come to orbits, and I can checkered flag and stop the race, as you normally would, right? Your process in orbits won't change at all. This race is completed. Now when I come back to my race pass, I can go to the results tab, and I can import the qualifying results. I'll import these. Mark your DNF, DNS, DQ, or black flags. You'll see the times have come over here as well. Save is completed. We're good to go. Now, if this is a regular race, you know that, his transponder fell off, but he actually finished 8th. I can just click and drag him up to 8th. So you can still manually manipulate these results if necessary, whatever you need to do there to make those changes. Qualifying is done. I'll go back to lineups, and I'll calculate my heat race lineups. I'll calculate lineups. I'm just going to do heat races from qualifying and calculate, but there are, like I said, a ton of heat race options there. Let me get out of orbits now so that you can see what this looks like with Westhold later on. Okay, disconnected all of that. We'll try again in a minute. For our heat races, let's say you're not using transponders, right? Let's say you don't have transponders, or your timing system went down, or whatever else. It's pretty simple. I can go to the results tab, and instead of clicking the MRP Live link at the top of the screen, I can either click on the name of the driver in the order that they finished, or I can type the number in this box and click enter in the order that they finished. Either way brings over the results order, right? Save, we're good. You find out later on, hey, this guy who won didn't make weight at the scales. Check the DQ box, resave, pushes him to the bottom. I can do the same for Heat 2. So you can manually set your results pretty easily as well. So that's fairly nice as well. Now I can go back to lineups. My heat races are done. I'm going to start them straight up, right? Inside row is Heat 1, outside row is Heat 2. There is my starting lineup. So instead of pushing this information to orbits again, I'm going to open Race Manager, and we'll talk about pushing this information into Westhold. Works very similarly. In the Setup tab in Westhold, there is an IP address. There is a port number. Type in the IP. The port number, again, is basically always 50,000. That doesn't change. Select the other timing system. MRP Live code, you get it the same way. It's the same event, so it's going to be the same MRP Live code here. Either way, I can paste that into the box, and I can connect. And there we are. So let me get a fresh event fired up here in Westhold. Here we go. I've got an event with nothing in it in Westhold. Setup is what I need it to be. I can press Get Lineups here, and it's the same process. Now in Westhold, I click the Assign tab. There's no import process, right? I just have my competitors list and my lineup that came over. Got my A feature was the last one I calculated. That's what came over. It'll, again, bring over all classes, bring over all lineups that are not yet completed. Works the same way. So it's even more seamless in Westhold than it is in Orbits, but both really, really easy to get that data over there. So let me run a fake race here in Westhold. One other thing, I guess I'll go back to the lineup monitor so you can see that all all it's showing here is my A feature because I completed qualifying. I completed the heat race. The A feature is the only thing that's showing here. Live timing screen, it's watching the A feature now. This is, again, where you can start to see all of the different views, all of those types of things here. So let me get rid of that. I'll go back to Race Manager. I don't want to stop the race halfway through a lap, so we'll get one more in. Finish, stop. Works the same way in Race Manager. Now when I come back to my race pass in the results tab, you'll be able to see again, there's an A feature at the top of the screen. I can click this button. It does the same thing as the link at the top of the screen. Doesn't matter. Either way, there we go. My race is completed. I can save as completed. And that's a race night. What you'll find is the most important part of this is entries, right? We have to have the right driver profile with the right transponder number, with the right car owner. All of that has to be correct. But after you get entries done, it's just repetitive. I'm just calculating lineups, sending them to your live timing system, bringing the results back. Calculate lineups, send to the timing system, bring the results back. If you have qualifying heats and features like I did, you're basically just going to do that stuff 3 times in a night, and that's the night. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple there. Once your race is concluded, the last step to all of this is points and pay. This is another thing that you can do in advance to prepare for race night. But up in the upper right, there's a settings option where you can set your points and pay schemes, where you're basically going through and you're finding or creating a point structure and a payout structure for each position, right? So 1st through 21st I've got in here, starts at 100. Everybody gets at least 5. You can set show-up points. You can set DNF, DNS, DQ, or black flag custom point totals. You can set a lot of things for multiple race types, whatever you want it to be, whatever you want to do. So you get your scheme correct. And by the way, that scheme creation is something that we absolutely want to help with here at My Race Pass. If you have questions or concerns on how to do that, send us an email. That's what we're here for. We want to try to help. But points and pay comes up, end of the night. Pick the scheme that you want to use. What did I say I was going to do? The June one, perfect. That goes for your payouts as well. Pick the point scheme, pick the payout scheme, and we'll go ahead and add this. This is also where you can select if your points apply to competitors or owners or both or all. When we talked about creating multiple schedules on Monday, this is where you can decide what one or multiple schedules the points apply to. The only other thing that I really point your attention to is the eligibility option, which we talked about the license check at the beginning of this in the setup screen. You can apply points to licensed or only temporary licensed drivers if you need them to have registered. Same thing with payouts if you want to do it that way. Once you got that set, we'll add. Points is calculated. Payouts are calculated. I can reset if it applies to competitors or owners or both. I can review what I've got. I can review what I've got on a per race basis. If I need to add some kind of bonus or a negative in here, I can, right? If we're going to dock this guy, 10 points for rough driving, or we're going to give this guy a $100 bonus for being the hard charger, you can manually adjust these things. But as long as your scheme is correct, this should be pretty straightforward, right? This should be, pretty simple to get through. When you calculate points here, it takes about 20 minutes for the servers to update. But on the app, about 20 minutes later, your points are updated. If you do a website through My Race Pass, about 20 minutes later, your website's updated. So these things can all start to, kind of play together in a more simple fashion. Last step then to this is the Create Payments button. That takes us to the Payments tab in Season Management that I said we'd talk about Monday when we went through this. But this is where you can tell the program what type of payment you're doing. If you need to edit a payment amount, you can here. Otherwise, you can print checks from this screen, which basically you just need the layout that you're doing, put in the starting check number, what's the printing order that you want to use, running order, last name, car number, all that kind of stuff. I'll print them by last name and create. Now we can print our checks, right? Hit the print button, checks start printing out of the printer. All you have to do is sign and hand them to the driver. So that's step one. Here we go. There's a print option at the bottom of the screen for report or mailing labels. If you're mailing your checks out, you can print the mailing labels directly from this screen. Remember, we get their addresses via registration, but if you've got their addresses, print your mailing labels. We're good to go there. The report I use at the back gate for drivers signing for their payouts. So I've got my list of printed checks here, the amount, the check number. If the payee is a car owner, the driver's name is in parentheses. I just have them sign in the white space, hand them their check for the night. Now I can more easily track who has obtained their payouts and who hasn't. Then you can also export this information to QuickBooks. If you use QuickBooks to track your financials, download the .iif file that you can import into QuickBooks here as well. And then you can shut the lights off and go home. That's a race night. All right. Again, we're talking about entries, lineups, results, points, and payouts. We looked at the live timing screen. We looked at the lineup monitor screen. And those are all there. I want to remind you, this is recorded. If you want to come back and review this, it'll be on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow. Go to youtube.com, search My Race Pass. As soon as I can get it uploaded tomorrow, it'll be there. If you've got questions, email us, support@myracepass.com. We want to help. We want to make this seamless. We want to answer any questions that you've got. So feel free to email us at any time. And if anything else comes up, definitely let us know. You can give us a call as well. Our office number, will be listed on the on any of our support pages. We've got an entire support library, mrphelp.com, where we've written help center articles for all of these topics, and many of those articles have a video attached as well. So there's multiple avenues to help. Outside of that, though, that's all I've got. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day. We'll do this again on Friday, where we talk about websites, we talk about news, we talk about tickets and some other things. But until then, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your afternoon.